I'm very leery of prognostication because I think over the time that I've served in this profession, I've had the experience that people who foretell what's going to happen in higher education are usually wrong. They're wrong for a lot of different reasons, because the pace of change is pretty difficult to predict, first of all, and because the implications of change are often unknowable at the time that we are anticipating change. Nevertheless, this is something that a university president thinks about all the time because one of our obligations, and one of the obligations of boards of trustees, is really to think about the future and to plan for the future. And so we do this work even with the proviso that we need to be very careful in understanding that many factors enter into play to change what could actually be the outcome. What are some of the factors that are the most important that we consider? Obviously, demographic changes are inordinately important for universities. We serve the public good. We prepare students to go into different roles in society, and so obviously we have to know about how patterns, population patterns are evolving, and so we pay a lot of attention to that. We pay attention to the mix of students, the gender mix, the racial mix. Yes, you can say race and racial mix, no matter what people tell you, because we have to do that on our campuses. We pay attention to societal needs that evolve. And of course, importantly for universities, the development of new knowledge and how we can address needs based on the new findings of scholarship and so forth. So all of these factors today combine to suggest that education policy, programs, and demographics will affect the landscape of higher education in the next 10 years and more. So what's happening? You all know that the demographic changes are predicted to be very significant, particularly in Texas. Often when we hear presentations about demographic changes in Texas, it sounds a little frightening to people because the numbers are overwhelming. And so we hear that the Hispanic population is growing very significantly, but in the last 10 years, at least until 2018, the Hispanic population of Texas grew by 20%. It's forecast to continue in that direction, and then people often contrast that with the growth in the white population, and that is expected to be flat. And so people see those data and they think, oh my goodness, the state of Texas is changing, and what does that mean for us? So we think a good deal about that in higher education, and yet higher education is an area that does not change at the same pace. And so we worry a lot about whether or not we're going to be prepared for the very different composition of our campuses. We also know that in terms of gender, women now outnumber men in many areas of study and in school completion. What does that mean in terms of the aspirations of boys and the way that girls today think about their opportunities in life? It means something very different in terms of the way students elect certain courses of study and opportunities in higher education. When I was graduating from high school in Wheatley, high school in Fifth Ward, Houston, I knew that I had no opportunities. And so I thought I would probably, if I had to, become a maid like my mother. I thought that there was a slight chance I might be able to work in an office one day. And so I continued into college thinking maybe I'd find something. But at that juncture, the world was very different, And the expectations of me and all of my peers at Wheatley was that we would have no such opportunities. We didn't anticipate the pace of change. We didn't anticipate that things would open up the way that they have. And so today, as we look at our girls and our boys as they're coming into college, we're trying to anticipate so that they will be thinking differently about their aspirations. I worry a lot about the socialization of these new populations in their neighborhoods, in their schools, and finally at the university level. What are some of the things that we worry about when it comes to socialization? The reality is that students who come from very disparate backgrounds often don't know really how to experience college. They don't know what to think about the way the college that they have come to is set up. And so they puzzle about that. Often has a tremendous effect on them when they're trying to do their studies. They may feel that they don't fit in. They may feel that they're getting signals that their particular group is not appropriate to the study that they're doing. And so we have to worry a good deal about how we face these populations in a welcoming and inclusive way. One of the ways to do that is to establish common expectations when students come in. We work hard at Prairie View in trying to do that. We try to form bonds of cooperation and practice reconciling ourselves to the differences among us, because the differences, even within ethnic groups, are often quite pronounced. One of the things that happens when students come into higher education is they have to deal with lots of norms and myths and narratives that reject them and their background. As you know, across the country today, students and faculty and others are rejecting older myths and older iconic iconography in universities. And you see across a span of types of universities that this is taking place, whether it's Georgetown or Brown or the University of Texas or Rice University. There are efforts underway to try to deal with historic narratives that no longer fit for new populations. So how do we also place more emphasis on higher expectations on the societal role of education, so that these new populations coming in will understand that they have an obligation to help build society, although the society they may be coming into does not feel as if they belong to it yet. So the changing demographics also assist us in addressing the challenge of a massive change, because new populations tend to be much more adept in adapting to those changes than populations that have been accustomed to performing in certain kinds of roles and having certain kinds of preferences. And so I'm very encouraged with the students that I see that they are very anxious to be a part of this new world, especially the new world of technology. What can we do in the coming time to make sure that education really works for the new populations coming in? First of all, we have to establish that the continuum of education is most important. And that means that we have to care just as much about preschool, first grade, all the way through middle school, elementary school, and high school as we care about junior college, as we care about the most elite university. When I was president of Brown, I talked to my colleagues in the Ivy League about having a massive program to embrace community colleges. That proposal didn't go over well, I must say. I still believe it's the answer for all of us, that until we embrace the continuum of education, the quality of schools, the quality of our junior colleges, our ability to move people from one to the other, we will have only limited success in realizing the goals of the country. Finally, I would say that I'm most concerned about the fractious nature of the discussion about changing populations coming into play. You know, Prairie View was founded in 1876. Thank goodness, because it's just after slavery, and without the legislature passing the law to set up Prairie View, there would be very few students of African American descent who are educated in the state, and we've made an enormous contribution to the state. These populations coming in are going to have the same experience, I think, and that is they will be shut out of opportunities because our universities and our schools are not yet ready for the cultural change that will be necessary to embrace these populations. So what I advocate always is that we focus on the cultural aspect of our institutions to make sure that we're going to be ready. And what does that mean? That means opening up the way that we make decisions, opening up the way that we embrace difference, using that difference to refine our decision making, improve on what we're doing, and to do it in a meaningful and not unsympathetic way. I think you all may be aware of the Harvard case, where there is a group on a quixotic path to destroy the ability of universities to take difference into account in admitting students. I think that is absolutely the wrong direction, and if we continue on the path of trying to do that, we will be a very different society, we will be an impoverished society, and we will be a troubled society.